Hey everybody, I wanted to talk a bit about just, it's a weird topic. So, you know how we talk about often how websites develop over the years and how different it is when you pull a website from, when it first started to now and how it looks? I wanted to talk about that. So, Facebook over the years, right? If you look at this graph I have over here, I'll highlight it. I'll try to highlight it. Photos, newsfeed, platform apps, real-time stream, like button, groups, messages. You see how a lot of the things we take for granted in Facebook now weren't even around from the start? Now, what if we looked at Facebook as if it came out in the 80s or the 90s? What would it be like? I think that's a really interesting topic that a lot of people don't really take into account. How applications kind of appear now in the 2020s and have existed for like 15, 20 years. In Facebook's case, February 4th, 2004 was when was when the application first kind of made its mark. That's 16 years from now. And they didn't have a lot of the features they have now. So I tried to take this idea is what if Facebook was in the 80s and the 90s, what would it be like? And in this short video, which I've, poorly made, let's be honest, I want to just talk about my opinions of if it was in the 90s and 80s, what it would be like. And I made a little website, which I'll link in the video. So in the 90s, a lot of applications in the 90s kind of fit, I highlighted it, but this format, which, yeah, there's a lot of issues going on, but they had a join and sign in page and a bunch of little home pages, calendar, chat boards. So you know how forums work? I feel like in the 90s, Facebook, because it came out in 2004, Facebook would have had a very forum-oriented page where the news and anything that was very popular would come up on the right, kind of like this website had, which was called Bolster at the time. And on the left, you could maybe sign in and you could see all the stuff. Friends wasn't a big thing, but your name would have been an important factor. And this is 2004 Facebook. It had an email password and a login. You could see people who were at your school, find out who were in your classes, look for friends. But I think that was kind of not fully made at the time. So I feel like it would have taken over similar to what this site was like with topics and features. Because I always feel like Facebook kind of was on the end of you push your opinion out to other people, but you also have your name attached to it. So I feel like it would have taken a lot of bolsters aspects and their beginning aspects where you had email password maybe would have came out. But as you can see from Bolster, it was not focused as much on friendships and more on here's a few people you might know because it has like the birthdays and stuff, but it is more on displaying your opinion on common topics. Now in the 80s, this site, which, hold on, let me zoom in a lot. This site had just a bunch of, it was on the net since 1981. You see how it has just a bunch of topics just kind of displayed? I feel like old Facebook has always been very current event oriented. I can't even use Facebook anymore because I hate news and upsetting information about what's going on. I actually hate social media in general, but I feel like old Facebook would have fit on the idea that important current events should be displayed to everybody, and maybe it would be very poorly formatted in the sense that it would be a forum with a kind of like, think about old forums. You have a discussion post and a bunch of comments. That's kind of how Facebook would be. It'd be less focused on the social media and communicating aspects and more on collecting information. I feel like that's important. This site kind of shows that. It puts current events and issues going on And then below it were focused issues. So imagine if this was 20 years back, right? And you didn't have a whole login information, but you could see a register login if that was gone. And all you'd do is focus on, I am a 20-year-old American guy. I think politics are blah, 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 blah. That's kind of what I imagine it would be like in the olden days, because it all was just information based. There wasn't connecting. There wasn't all of the aspects that we often take for granted. It was just, how do you feel about a topic? Explain. And I feel like that's kind of how Facebook has been since the beginning. I hate Facebook now for what it's become. But when it was building up to how it is now, I feel like personal opinions and explanations and just discussion forum posts has always been the forefront of Facebook. Even from the beginning, if you're searching people at your school and finding who are in your classes, it's all about connecting. They didn't have that aspect where you could specify where you're at and who you're connecting with in the 80s, but I bet you they could ask you your opinion on topics like politics and such. Now explain. That was a thing they could have done back in the 80s. And I feel like that's what Facebook has become now, where it's just your friends and similar viewpoints. As you watch this trend go up, you see how it starts out with photos, newsfeed, and then goes into groups, messages, and even more specific as it goes up this little arc. Now, if you feel, you know what, I hate the idea of people using planes to travel, right? And all your likes and all your comments and all your focuses are on, you know what, planes are terrible. You will narrow down to that specific focus, and all your friends will say, you know what, planes are terrible. And you can be like, I so agree. Now, if you go back to a before all of this happened, it would just be a forum of opinions on planes, and everyone below would put their opinions. You wouldn't be put into groups yet, but I think Facebook has kind of set that up to be what its focus is. It's kind of how social media is now. Your likes and what you focus on will end up being what you see. And I feel like Facebook really took that fully into the focus even before 2012. That was kind of where it was going. But I bet in 1980s, it would be the technology is not fully there yet, but you can put your opinions out into the world and you can see that. And by the 1990s, you kind of had a page where you could start to narrow down, but it was more focused on location or a specific topic like where you go to school, and you follow that group. But by now, it's more on opinion and viewpoint. So I'm sorry if this kind of got biased, but that was kind of where I wanted to go into, was just like Facebook, what it would have been like in the past, how it is now, et cetera, et cetera. I hope you're all doing well. Check out my link in my description. I'll put my website I created. But besides that, thanks for watching.